Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reid, and this is the review of the world premiere episode of DC Studios' Lanterns, which premiered on HBO and HBO Max Sunday, August the 16th. How is everybody doing out there? Welcome to the show, everyone. This was a highly anticipated show by me because I'm a big fan of Green Lantern. I love that comic run of this character, not only Hal Jordan, but also John Stewart. And to have them both in a TV show, live action TV show, I was guns a-blazing, man. I was ready to go, geared up, anticipating this show ever since they announced it. The other reason would be because DC needs a win. They need a win in a big way. They're fresh off of the heels from licking their wounds from the Supergirl bomb at the box office. Even though I didn't think it was a bad movie, but it wasn't great. And they're kind of in the dumpster right now. So they need something to kind of get everybody back on board with this DC universe that James Gunn is creating over there. So I was highly anticipating this show. The show stars Kyle Chandler and Aaron Pierre as Hal Jordan and John Stewart, respectively. This is the third television show in the DC universe. And another good thing that kind of drew me into this wasn't going to be your standard comic book superhero show. You know, punchy, fly, uniforms and costumes and all the other good stuff. It was more grounded. They promised us that this was going to be kind of a true detective feel, a detective story set in the Lantern Corps. And you know, I'm there for that because once again, another favorite of mine is True Detective. Love that series going back to when Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson kicked it all off. Most recently with Jodie Foster, Dark Country. I loved detective element of that show. I'm big on that, and very, very well put together show. And so if they were going to follow that trope and have it set in a superhero world, I'm all for blending genres. You know, that's the only way you're going to keep the superhero genre fresh. You know, that's the only way you can avoid superhero fatigue. And you know, the showrunners here with Chris Monday and Damon Lindelof, who, look, depending on who you ask, David Lindelof is not the greatest. You know, going back to Lost, yeah, Lost was good, and then it wasn't. You know, he also wrote Prometheus, which the vast majority of people couldn't stand. He's just, I wouldn't say he's off and on. He's more off than he is on, because I like Watchmen, you know, the HBO series, Watchmen. I enjoyed that, but I did acknowledge those fans of the Watchmen comics or that graphic novel upset with that show because it didn't follow that formula, you know, and it was all over the place. I can acknowledge all that, but for me personally, I enjoyed it for what it was, you know. It wasn't the greatest thing on earth, but it was entertaining, and that's all I wanted at the end of the day. That brings me to Lanterns. This first episode, I must say, deeply enjoyed. I am so in on this show. It was, you needed this first episode to work in order to hook me in and hook everybody else in, of course, to give it a chance. And so far, so good. This show, I thought was funny. It was funnier than I thought it would be. and not just goofy funny. It's not goofy funny. It's just funny. It had funny moments. The banter between Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart was great. The chemistry, first and foremost, the chemistry with Kyle Chandler and Aaron Pierre, mwah, the chef's kiss. Those two were born to play these roles. I mean, they were born to be on screen together. I love the back and forth because these are two completely different characters, especially if you follow the comic iterations of these characters, two completely different characters. And to have them on the screen together, how would that dynamic work? And you needed two actors that knew what they were doing and can actually convince you that they are Green Lanterns, that they're walking around Earth with these superpowers. Well, a superpower ring, because they're normal, they're human, they're not Superman, they're not Wonder Woman, they're not aliens and Greek goddesses. They are human beings like me and you. They just so happen to have this ring. Well, there's one ring between the two of them, which is another great dynamic with Hal Jordan being the one to train Jon Stewart here. I'm for it. And Jon Stewart being this military guy, his father was in the military, very reserved, very calculated and focused. And Hal Jordan, an older Hal Jordan, who really just flies by the seat of his pants. He just does what he wants, carefree. And to have those two different dynamics try to work together, I think so far we've been treated to something really special here. I will give it this as far as a negative, and this was my only negative, but it's a big negative, a very big negative on this show. The episode ends. The episode ends is a time jump. It's a 10-year time jump. The series is set in 2016. So, okay, we're set in 2016. 10 years ago, this event happened in Nebraska where they're going to investigate. Apparently there's aliens involved. Nobody believes that it's aliens, but except for Kyle Chandler or Hal Jordan, I should say. And they're there to investigate this small town thing. And this leads to a mystery, a murder mystery that for all of us detective story fans, true detective fans, Slow Horses, if you ever watched that show, really good show. All those elements are there. And I'm like, okay, they're going to slowly roll out this mystery and how the lanterns are going to solve it and what's next around the corner, who's who, because this show has already promised us, and this isn't a spoiler, it was in the trailer, that manhunters are going to appear on this show. And manhunters, if you don't know, if you're not into the comics, are shapeshifters. So they could be walking amongst us and we don't know this. And so that's there. So who's who? Who is who? Who is real? Who is whatever? And at the end of the episode, we get a time jump to 2026. And Hal Jordan's dead. And that just killed all the allure. Because up to that point, this was an awesome show. I was so impressed with the show. Still impressed. That didn't deter me enough to whereas I'm not watching it. But what it did do, it took away my guessing what's next element out of the show. I don't feel Hal Jordan is going to be in any peril throughout this season. When we go, I guess this non-linear storytelling that we're going to be telling here, because it opens up another mystery: who murdered Hal Jordan here, or is that Hal Jordan? Because that could be another mystery. But it opens up a lot of things here that I just don't like that. You know, I non-linear storytelling is fine if it works, you know, if it works properly, if it's used properly. Um and this could pay off, but I wasn't expecting that on the first episode. You know what I'm saying? It just sucked all the air out of the balloon because it was firing on all cylinders. The chemistry between Kyle Chandler and Aaron Pierre were great. All of the other actors, the supporting actors in this small town, when you had Kelly McDonald, uh, oh man, I can't forget. I keep forgetting his name. He shows up. Is Garrett something? I can't remember his last name, but he's great. Jason Ritter, uh, and others. I'm blanking on their names, but the supporting cast was great, you know, and I liked how that dynamic was working. I loved the small town feel of it all. It felt real and authentic and grounded. All of this was working. The mystery was working. The reveal of the alien was working. Everything worked. It was a perfect episode. And then that happened, you know, right at the end. And I'm like, why? Why did you waste that? That was a perfect moment. I mean, you could have saved that, and that could have been the story for next season. You know what I'm saying? It didn't have to happen this soon. I already went into this season, or went into this series believing that Hal Jordan was going to die, because if you knew the comics, that's pretty much how John Stewart became the Green Lantern. So that wasn't a shock. None of that it didn't shock me. But the thing was, we're telling this particular story, and it takes all of the allure away from it. And I'm just hoping that it doesn't damage my enjoyment of the show. Now, I'm going to go full naive. I'm going to go full just blanking it out of my head and pretend it didn't happen. And I'm going to pretend like it didn't happen and go forth like they know what they're doing. I'm confident they know what they're doing. And let's see how it all plays out. Like I said before, this could be a red herring. This could be a swerve. Maybe that wasn't Hal Jordan, because when John Stewart checked him for the ring, he didn't have the ring. And so, hey, maybe that's something else. Maybe that's one of the mine hunters. I don't know. I guess I have to continue to watch to see. But that's part of the mystery. That is part of the mystery. And to be fair, True Detective kind of did the same thing, you know, with their non-linear storytelling. But at least that first season, I know did for sure. But it worked. The way they did it worked. They didn't, you know, it didn't kill the main character in the first episode, and then we had to bounce back, you know. So, we'll see. We'll see how this all plays out. But I enjoyed it. Other than that, I really thought this was great. I loved the writing. I loved the acting. I loved the directing here. And I mentioned Slow Horses. The director of this episode is one of the directors on Slow Horses. So that was pretty smart on their end to keep that vibe going. So I'm all in on that. The mystery has me intrigued, how they're going to uncover this big cover up and everything else. I am fully all invested in this show. Let's see if my worries can be put to rest as we continue to watch this first season of Lanterns. But you let me know. Is it me? Am I tripping? Maybe I'm reading into this too much. I think maybe my expectations were elevated super high, and that just let me down. in those final 2 to 3 minutes of the episode. Maybe, maybe, but hey, let me know. Let me know. I need you to talk me off the ledge. Maybe you see it differently. Maybe you say, well, Kevin, you don't understand. You're an idiot. This is the reason why it's such and such and such. And hey, I'm open to that. I'm open to listen. I'm open to learn. How can you let me know? Subscribe to the kbradionetwork.com website where you can be updated on all episodes that's dropping on this network, as well as previous episodes that we have on the show. Don't forget about YouTube. Subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel and like this video while you're there. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this review of the premiere episode of DC Studios' Lanterns. Want you all to know that I love you, continue to love everyone, and until we speak again, you all be blessed.